Field. I want to thank you all for coming today. Today I'm going to demonstrate how to make pumpkin bread, which is a great dessert food. Now the first step when baking anything is to make sure that your oven is set to the proper temperature. That way the food will be ready to go in when the oven is hot. So we're going to set our oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit today. I'm going to press bake and then up it to 350.
And how long does it usually take the oven to preheat?
That's a good question. Depending on the oven, it will usually take 5 to 10 minutes. My oven will beep when it's ready. Now it's beeping right now because our oven was already hot and it's ready to go. So let's start by going over the ingredients we're going to need to make pumpkin bread. We're going to need 3 cups of flour, 2 cups of sugar, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt, 3 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1 1/4 cups of canola oil, and 4 eggs. Now I've already mixed our eggs, so this right here is about 4 eggs beaten together. It's very important to mix our ingredients separately, so today we're going to start by mixing our dry ingredients first in a large mixing bowl. Like I said, we'll need 3 cups of flour.
Do you have to pat down the flour?
No. That is a tricky question, and I actually didn't know whether to pat it down or not when I first made this. But if you pat down your flour, you're going to end up with a flat mixture with too much flour and too little of everything else.
Oh, okay.
Now once your flour is added, you're going to add your baking soda next. A quick trick when doing baking soda is to use a teaspoon measure, dip it in, and then even it off on the top of the box. Once you add the baking soda in, you'll mix it all together. Now that our baking soda is in, we're going to use 1 teaspoon of salt. Again, we'll use the same measuring cup. Now that we've added the salt, we're going to mix all 3 of these ingredients together. So just to go over again, we have 3 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1 teaspoon of salt.
Can you mix it in a mixer?
No, that is a great question. It's actually pretty bad to mix it in a mixer because then the ingredients will be beaten too much and the mixture won't rise when you put it in the oven. So next we're going to add our cinnamon. Now cinnamon you actually need more of than the salt and the baking soda, so we're going to add 3 teaspoons of cinnamon. There's 2. And here's our 3rd. So once you've added the cinnamon, you can mix it all together once again. As you can see, the mixture is going to start turning colors because the cinnamon is a slightly darker color. That'll give you a better indication of whether it's thoroughly mixed. The last dry ingredient we're going to add is 2 cups of sugar.
You can use the same measuring cup to measure the flour and the sugar?
Yes, because they're dry ingredients and we're adding them all together anyways, it won't affect the pumpkin bread. So now that we've added our 2 cups of sugar, we're going to mix all our dry ingredients together. Next, and then after that, we will start on our wet ingredients. Now, like I said, it's very important to use separate containers for your wet and dry ingredients. Since I've already whisked our 4 eggs with a whisk, we're going to add 1 1/4 cups of canola oil next. So we will measure that out over the top of the eggs. That way if we spill, it's not going to go onto the counter space.
Do you have to use canola oil?
No, you can actually use vegetable oil as well, so it doesn't make much of a difference. And there is our extra 4th cup. Okay, now that those are added together, you're going to mix them. When you feel like they're thoroughly mixed, you can add your pumpkin next. Now, I use Libby's pumpkin mix, but any pumpkin mix will suffice. Just make sure that you get it all out of the container. This is what's going to give the bread its pumpkin flavor. And there is the last little bit right there. Okay, now that we've added our pumpkin, we'll remove the whisk, and we'll mix this up. Okay, once your wet ingredients are all mixed together, you're going to create a sort of a hole in the middle of your dry ingredients. That way you can pour your wet ingredients in. So now that we have sort of a wedge, as you can kind of see, there's a little bit of a hole in the center of the container. That way your wet ingredients will fit right in. So you will pour your wet ingredients in, making sure to get all the extra out. And once again, you'll use your spatula to make sure you get that extra little bit of pumpkin out. You want every little bit of pumpkin you can get. It actually adds some fiber to the mixture. Now we're going to mix our wet and our dry ingredients. This will probably take the most of your prep time just because it's kind of difficult to make sure they're all intermixed and that the flour is wet and the pumpkin is spread evenly throughout.
How long do you mix it for?
I'd mix it about 5 minutes, just until all your flour is absorbed and everything seems like a consistent mixture. We're getting closer right now, but it may take us a few seconds to get there.
How many calories are in a slice of pumpkin bread?
That's a good question. I never knew the answer, and I kind of wish I didn't know the answer, but it's about 300 calories per slice with 6 grams of fat. And again, the pumpkin will add some fiber to your pumpkin bread, so you can take a little solace in the fact that you'll get some fiber in your meal. Okay, we are almost there. After we finish mixing this, we're going to be on to prepping the pan.
What does prepping the pan involve?
Well, I'm going to use an 18 by 24 inch pan. That way it'll cut down on our cook time.
Do you have to use an 18 by 24 inch pan?
No, you can actually use 2 loaf pans instead, but the cook time will be about twice as much. So usually when you're in a hurry and cooking for a big group, you want it to be as fast as possible. But if you'd rather have smaller servings, 2 loaf pans might be a better option. Okay, next I'm going to use pan spray to prep the pan so it won't stick when I try and take the pumpkin out. It's important to spray it away from the stove because if you spray it on the stove, it can ruin your burners, which would not be a good day. Okay, next we will add all of our ingredients with a little more mixing.
What do you recommend eating pumpkin bread with?
That's a good question. As you can see, maybe here on the back counter, I have a thing of milk out. Milk is always one of my favorites with pumpkin bread, just like cookies and milk. I would also recommend using pumpkin bread for big events with lots of people. As you can see, an 18 by 24 inch pan is going to serve a lot of people, so don't try making this recipe just for you and one other person.
So it would be good to take to my staff meeting on Monday?
Yeah, that'd be a great place to take pumpkin bread. You could also take it to a church event, a sleepover, a holiday event with friends and family. So next, once all our ingredients are mixed, we're going to pour it into our pan. I'm using the big spoon at first to get most of the pumpkin out, but after that I'm going to go back with our spatula and make sure we get every little piece of the bread out.
Do you have to spread the pumpkin mixture around with the spatula?
Yes, if you don't, you'll end up with a giant glob of pumpkin. Banging it to make sure I don't drip it all over. Okay, now we'll go in with our spatula. Make sure we get all the extra out from around the edges. There we go.
Could you possibly cut the recipe in half if you didn't want to serve as many people?
Yes, that would work perfectly fine. Just use a smaller pan, otherwise it won't cover the entire base of the pan.
Oh.
So now we're going to spread our pumpkin out all over the pan. I'm just using a spatula. You could probably use a spoon or a knife to spread it, but since we already have a spatula out, we will use that. Now it doesn't have to be perfect, but just make sure there aren't any empty spaces in the pan. You kind of want an even consistency, but you'll probably want to slice it if you're making it in the pan before you serve it anyway, so no one will know if there were slight imperfections. Okay, so now that our pumpkin is in the pan, we're going to stick it in the oven. Now many of you might have an issue like me that your oven isn't big enough to hold this large of a pan. So you're going to try sliding it in and wiggling it a little bit on this bottom shelf. Okay, and now we will close the oven door and we'll set the timer for 25 to 30 minutes.
And you said if you use 2 pans, it takes longer to cook it. Is that right?
Yes, if you use the 2 love pans, it's going to take you about an hour, and that's a long time to be sitting around waiting on your pumpkin bread to be ready. So now that our pumpkin's in, we would wait 25 minutes for it to be ready. Now, to test and see whether it's ready, you're going to use a toothpick, like this one, and you'll just stick it into the center of the pan to make sure that it's ready to serve. If it comes out clean, it's good to go, and you can take it out of the oven. Now, you'll also want to let it cool for a few minutes just to make sure it won't fall apart when you pull it out. So once you're done, you'll have pumpkin bread that looks like this and is delicious to serve with some milk for guests.